Textbooks make history look neat because the mess gets cropped out. The photos you rarely see are the ones that show fear, shame, and proof that someone would rather you ignore. In this countdown, we're opening 100 historic images that were restricted, softened, or quietly pushed aside. For each one, we'll tell you what you're looking at and why someone didn't want you staring too long. 1. School children in gas masks, England. A normal classroom, but every child wears a gas mask with glass eyes and tight straps. This was chemical war training, taught like reading and math. The image feels not allowed now because it turns childhood into a drill for disaster, and it can trigger fear without warning. In its day, officials liked photos like this because they proved discipline and readiness. What it really proves is darker. Adults built a future where kids rehearsed catastrophe, then called it safety. 2. Cramped WW2 ball turret. The ball turret hangs under a bomber like a clear bubble, barely big enough for a body. The gunner inside is folded tight, knees pressed in, hands on triggers, waiting. Posters showed brave pilots with clean skies, not the cramped space where you could freeze, panic, or die trapped. That is why this view stayed rare. Today, it can be limited because it feels too intense, even without blood. The frame is quiet, but it shows how war made survival depend on small metal walls. 3. A mother's goodbye before World War I. On a station platform, a mother grips her son's coat, as if fabric can hold him back. His uniform is neat, his face boyish. The crowd rushes, but the hug slows time. Leaders preferred smiling send-offs because sorrow does not recruit. This kind of photo stayed in private albums, then returned as truth. It also feels sensitive now, because it captures intimate pain for strangers to watch. The camera kept a goodbye that might have been the last. 4. A Christmas truce moment, 1914. In winter mud, soldiers from opposing sides stand close enough to speak. Some trade cigarettes, some smile, some stare like they cannot believe they are not shooting. Officers disliked images like this because they weaken the story that the enemy is a monster. So these moments were treated as mistakes, not evidence. Today, the photo still unsettles people because it breaks the simple good versus bad. It shows that war needs distance to keep hate alive, and one shared moment can puncture that distance. 5. A Marine offering a cigarette to a buried enemy soldier. After a battle, one Marine leans toward an enemy soldier trapped under debris or sand and offers a cigarette. It is a tiny gesture, but it carries a heavy message. I see you. Many archives favored victory poses, not mercy, because mercy raises questions nobody wants during conflict. Modern platforms often restrict scenes tied to death or severe injury, so images like this get hidden. Yet the photo matters because it records compassion inside ruin. It feels forbidden because kindness in war threatens the story of pure hatred. It reminds you that even enemies can share a human breath today. 6. Berlin, after the wall fell, refused a handshake. Crowds cheer, people climb, cameras flash, and history declares a new start. Then a photo catches a colder detail. One hand reaches out, and another hand refuses it. That refusal does not fit the victory story, so it is often skipped. It shows fear does not drop on command. Images like this get buried because they complicate celebrations. Today, it spreads because it feels honest. Freedom is fast. Trust is slow. The camera caught the wall breaking and the hard work that began after. 7. A young Soviet boy with a captured German officer. A child stands beside a captured officer, and the roles look upside down. The boy is small, yet the moment places him on the winning side of a huge machine. The officer looks tired and shocked, reduced from symbol to person. Editors were cautious with images like this because they can be used as propaganda from any direction. Modern viewers also see a child near violence and power games. The photo feels unreal, but that is war. It drags everyone into its gravity, even kids. 8. The last clear photo of the Titanic afloat. The ship sits bright against dark water, calm and confident, like nothing could touch it. No one in the frame looks doomed. That is the cruelty. The image captures the illusion of safety. Later, people favored lifeboats and wreckage, because those teach a clear lesson. This one feels not allowed, because it makes the disaster feel close, human, and possibly preventable. It is the moment before the story becomes myth. The camera froze the last time fine was believable. 9. Survivors after a famous disaster. Faces named later. A line of survivors stands wrapped in coats and blankets. Eyes swollen, bodies leaning with exhaustion. At first, papers printed them as a group, survivors with few names. Later, families and historians matched faces to lives, and the photo stopped being a symbol and became a record. That delay is the uncomfortable part. Big events strip people of identity for speed. Today, there are tighter rules about showing victims up close without consent, because trauma can be mined for clicks. This image asks you to see each person, not as a headline, not as a lesson, just as a life. 10. A battlefield grave marker with numbers, not names. A plain marker sticks out of the dirt, and it carries a number instead of a name. The surrounding land looks ordinary, and that makes the loss feel routine. Armies counted bodies to manage war, and the counting sometimes replaced honoring. Many outlets limit grave images now, since families deserve privacy, and viewers deserve care. But hiding them can also hide the cost. This photo is powerful because it is simple, death processed, like paperwork. The marker says someone ended here, and the system moved on. If you think the hidden images are only about blood, wait. The next set is about power. 11. Bandits Roost Alley, New York. A narrow alley sits in deep shadow, even in daylight. Men lean in doorways, kids hover at the edges, and the whole place feels tense. The picture was sold as proof of crime, but it also turned poverty into a show for comfortable viewers. It teaches fear of people instead of curiosity about causes. That is why context decides whether this photo is history or harm. Even now, gritty street images spread fast because they look real. This one reminds us that a camera can punish the poor twice, once with stereotypes, once with silence. 12. A gang portrait taken before execution. The men pose in neat clothes, hats set, faces calm, like they are marking a milestone. Knowing they were about to be executed flips the whole image. It shows how its punishment became entertainment for papers and crowds. A story with a final scene. Modern ethics push back against that, because the public gaze becomes a second sentence. Many places restrict photographing prisoners for this reason. The frame feels like a violation, freezing people at the edge of death without dignity. It also shows how easily audiences confuse cruelty with closure. 13. A frontier jail lineup. Prisoners stand in a row, while guards hover, using the camera like a warning sign. In many frontier towns, shame came first, and fairness came later. The lineup told the public, "We control you," and the photo made that control permanent. Today, mugshot culture is criticized for the same reason. An image can ruin someone long before any verdict. This photo feels modern because the harm is familiar. The lens is not neutral here. It is part of the punishment, turning a person into an example and turning a crowd into judges. 14. A staged display of seized weapons and stolen goods. A table is covered with pistols, knives, watches, coins, and cash, arranged carefully like trophies. An officer stands behind the pile, letting the camera announce victory. These images were meant to calm the public, but they also glamorize violence and suggest authority through intimidation. Modern departments often avoid this style because it can look like bragging or a threat. Evidence should be handled with care, not staged for applause. The photo matters because it reveals policing as theater, proof arranged to shape feelings. The camera is the badge here, telling you what to believe. 15. A mugshot that became a life sentence in public memory. A face fills the frame, lit flat, labeled with a name, reduced to one frozen second. In earlier eras, booking photos were printed freely, pinned to boards, and sold to papers. Even when someone was cleared, the picture stayed, and the public rarely corrected itself. That is why many places now restrict mugshot releases. A photo can outlive the truth. This entry is less about what someone did and more about what the camera does to identity. It turns a person into a headline you cannot escape. Even today, search results can punish harder than any judge. 16. A policeman hanging from a steel girder high above a city street. A policeman clings to a steel beam with open air beneath him. The shot was built to amaze, a symbol of courage during the skyscraper era. It also shows how normal extreme risk was and how little safety gear existed. Early media often celebrated danger as progress because calm work does not sell. Today, the same image could be flagged as reckless or used to push a tough hero myth that ignores the cost. The frame is thrilling, but it is also a reminder that many systems were built on the risk carried by ordinary people. 17. A public execution preparation scene. A platform stands ready, ropes or restraints nearby, and a crowd gathers as if it is waiting for a performance. The camera captures anticipation, casual faces, and curiosity. Modern societies tend to hide executions, and many reject them, because public killing can train people to enjoy harm. This photo became uncomfortable later because it exposes what justice looked like when it was a crowd event. There is no gore, yet it still feels brutal, because everything looks normal. The image warns how quickly cruelty can become routine. 18. Prisoners transported in chains. Men sit in a wagon or walk in a line with wrists linked and ankles bound. The chains do more than control bodies. They advertise shame to everyone who sees them. In older systems, that visibility was intentional, a lesson made public. Modern rules try to limit displays like this because dignity matters and humiliation can spark violence. The camera here becomes another guard, making the restraint permanent and shareable. This photo feels not allowed now because it treats people like objects in motion and calls it order. 19. Gravestone of someone executed by mistake. A simple gravestone marks a person the system killed, then later admitted it got it wrong. There is no courtroom noise in the frame, no cheering crowd, only the final record. Images like this were inconvenient because they challenge authority. Leaders prefer stories where the law is always right. This stone says it was not. Today, the photo spreads because it warns against blind trust. It forces a quiet thought. Justice can fail and still move on. The camera captured proof that error has weight. 20. A courtroom moment of forced humiliation. In a courtroom, someone stands while the room watches, and the scene carries ritual shame. The details vary across eras, but the feeling is clear. Power is being displayed as much as law is being applied. Modern courts often restrict filming because public clips can become a second punishment that never ends. This photo feels modern because our culture still enjoys humiliation, only faster now. The camera preserved a moment meant to teach obedience through embarrassment. It asks a hard question. When did shame become a tool we call justice? 21. A plague doctor outfit. The long coat and beaked mask look like fear turned into clothing. In its day, this was safety gear, stuffed with herbs and belief, used when people barely understood infection. The photo feels off limits now because it can turn real suffering into a spooky costume. It also reminds you how helpless cities felt, doctors walking into death with protection and thick hope. The image became folklore, but the truth is simple. People were trying to survive a world that had no good answers. 22. An early autopsy photo. A body rests on a table, tools close by, and the room feels more like a workshop than a goodbye. Early autopsy images were made for teaching, not families, and rarely with dignity in mind. That's why many archives restrict them today. Modern rules also limit them because they can shock, and because the dead still deserve privacy. What makes the photo unsettling is its calmness. It shows knowledge being built through a person who no longer has a choice, while the lens stays steady. 23. An iron lung interior. Inside the iron lung is a tight metal tunnel with dials, straps, and a hum that never stops. For some patients, it wasn't a short treatment. It was years of life, These photos were not shared much because they made illness feel too close to home. Today, the image is sensitive because it shows dependence secretly. It also changes the meaning of survival. Sometimes survival is not a rescue. It's waking up again inside the same shell. 24. A radiation warning artifact tied to early science. A small sign, a container, a label with warnings. It looks simple compared to what it represented. Early researchers worked with radiation before the dangers were fully understood, and many learned the cost too late. Museums display these artifacts carefully now, but the photo still feels uneasy because it points to progress built on hidden injuries. That era trusted badges and rules that were still being invented. This image is a reminder that discovery isn't always clean, and protection often arrives after harm. 25. A child with prosthetic legs. Early era. A child stands stiff, held up by metal braces and leather straps. The picture was often taken as proof of medical effort, not as a portrait of a full person with feelings and plans. That's why it hits so hard today. Disability was treated like a demonstration, something to show, measure, and discuss in public. Modern viewers also see the privacy problem, a child's body and struggle fixed for strangers. The photo matters because it reveals a past that was photographed differently before it learned to protect children. 26. A medical before and after photo used as propaganda. Two images sit side by side, labeled before and after, with a caption telling you what to believe. Sometimes it recorded real treatment. Sometimes it sold forced change as help. Either way, the person becomes an argument. These photos are restricted now because they can mislead, and because they treat bodies like exhibits. Consent is often unknown, which changes everything. If the subject didn't agree, the after can feel like a trophy. The camera makes the shift look simple, while the human cost stays hidden. 27. A historic vaccination line. A long line of people waits with sleeves rolled up, faces tight with nerves. Some look relieved, others look suspicious or exhausted, like they can't afford to debate. Vaccination photos were used to show order and progress, but they also show fear and pressure. Sharing them now can be sensitive because they turn public health into a symbol war, and the people in line become props. This image matters because it captures a real social moment. Bodies waiting while trust is tested, one small decision at a time. 28. A mental institution's therapy room. The room is tidy and quiet, which makes the equipment feel even harsher. Chairs, restraints, or machines sit ready, framed like normal tools, not like control. In many institutions, patients had little choice, and therapy could become punishment with a softer name. Photos like this were rarely shown because they raised questions nobody wanted to answer. Today, the image needs careful context, since it can re-traumatize people or normalize harm. The frame shows how cruelty can hide behind clean walls and polite labels. 29. A portrait of extreme body size turned into a spectacle. A person poses while the world stares, and the framing often invites shock, jokes, and cruelty. Newspapers and traveling shows made money by turning bodies into headlines. That's why this kind of image feels wrong now. It reduces a human being to a measurement and a reaction. Modern platforms limit it when it's mocking or exploitative. The photo still teaches something, though. It exposes a market for curiosity without empathy, and it asks a hard question. Was this portrait chosen freely, or chosen because there was no safer way to earn? 30. A scientist at work who shaped global fate. A scientist stands near equipment, focused, ordinary, almost boring. That ordinariness is the twist. Decisions made in rooms like this shaped war, energy, medicine, and the lives of people who never met the person holding the notebook. Photos of early labs can be rare because of secrecy, but also because they make history feel too human. Viewers want heroes or villains, not a tired face under harsh light. This frame shows how world-changing power often looks like routine work on a quiet day, right up until the results spill into the world. 31. Child labor in textile mills. A child stands beside a machine taller than their body, fingers near moving parts that do not forgive mistakes. Owners once used photos like this to brag about output, as if tiny workers were proof of success. Today, the same scene looks like evidence. Modern law would close it fast. Children should not risk their hands and lungs for wages. The photo shows a kid trying to look serious because serious meant employable. It also shows why reform took so long. Adults got used to seeing children as tools, not as kids. 32. Kids sleeping on fire escapes in summer heat. Children lie on metal fire escapes outside windows, using the night air like a fan. It looks calm until you notice the height, the hard rails, and the street far below. Families did this because apartments were crowded and hot, and there were few safe options. Today, people see danger and ask why no one stepped in. The image feels not allowed because it shows minors exposed in public, and because it reveals poverty without permission. Yet it also records a city that pushed kids to adapt in ways adults should have fixed. 33. Children in the Lower East Side streets. The street becomes a playground, a hallway, and a living room at once. Kids sit on stoops, dodge carts, and invent games between strangers. It's lively, but it's also risky. Traffic, sickness, and crime were close. Photos like this were often sold as grit, with little care for the children's dignity. Today, sharing close images of minors raises privacy concerns, and context matters more than ever. This picture is important because it shows childhood reshaped by a tight space. It also shows how easy it was for outsiders to treat poor kids as scenery. 34. A wake-up knocker. Outside windows. Before alarm clocks were cheap, some workers paid a knocker-up to tap windows and wake them for early shifts. In a photo, you might see a figure on the street, looking up, timing knocks. It sounds funny until you realize it came from exhaustion and strict factory rules. The image feels strange now because it shows how little control people had over sleep. Today we call it a quirky job. Back then, it was survival math. Oversleep, lose pay, lose rent, lose food. The camera catches a city running on fatigue. 35. A typical college dorm room. Early era A small room. One bed, one desk, a trunk, and personal items packed like a ship cabin. Movies later sold college as freedom and fun, but this photo shows how cramped normal could be. It also hints at rules, curfews, strict behavior codes, and pressure to fit in. Nothing violent is visible, yet the picture feels hidden because it breaks the glossy story. Modern dorm tours are marketing. This is plain reality. A young person building a future inside a tight box, learning to study and sleep with almost no privacy. 36. Kids riding inside store attractions. Children sit in moving displays inside a store, riding tiny cars or trains. It looks cute, yet it also shows early marketing aimed straight at kids. Safety rules were looser, and the goal was to hold attention, not protect bodies. Today, setups like this need strict checks, and images of children used in promotions come with legal limits. The photo matters because it shows how businesses learn to turn childhood into a sales tool. The ride is not only a play, but it's also a hook, a way to keep families inside the store longer while money changes hands. 37. A child posing with a weapon in a family portrait. A family stands stiff for the camera, and a child holds a gun like it's a normal household item. In some places, it was used for hunting and defense. But the portrait is also a message. We are ready. We are tough. Today, the same scene would raise fear and legal concern, because weapons and children don't mix safely. The image feels not allowed because it turns risk into tradition and hands it down like a rule. The child's expression often looks unsure, but the pose is taut. This frame shows how fear can be dressed up as pride. 38. A school drill. That looks like a nightmare. Rows of children follow instructions for an emergency they did not create. Sometimes it's gas masks. Sometimes it's ducking under desks. The photo is chilling because it shows fear taught as routine. Officials shared drill pictures to prove readiness, but many families saw them as proof that the world was not safe. Modern sharing is sensitive because it can trigger anxiety, and because it uses children to communicate threats. The frame is not about one classroom. It's about an era that turned schools into training grounds, asking kids to practice for disasters designed by adults. 39. A teen arrested for taking a parent's car. A teenager stands in a police photo trying to look tough or trying not to cry. One mistake becomes a permanent label when a camera is involved. In earlier decades, newspapers loved these stories. Wild youth, bad kid, trouble, and the photo did half the judging. Today, there are stronger protections around minors, because public shaming can shape a life more than the court does. This image matters because it shows the start of a modern problem. One bad choice turned into identity. The punishment keeps going long after the case ends. 40. A child caring for animals on a farm. A child holds a bucket or bottle, feeding animals with focus. It looks warm, but it is also work. On many farms, kids carried real responsibility early, not as a hobby, but because the family needed it. The photo can feel not allowed, now because it blurs the line between helping and labor, and because it shows a child in a role adults often romanticize. The frame captures tenderness and duty together. It reminds you that for many children, care and work were the same thing, and growing up meant doing adult tasks before anyone called you ready. 41. A hidden portrait of same-sex partners. Era when it was illegal. Two partners sit close, shoulders nearly touching, calm in a way that feels earned. The frame is simple, but the risk was not. In many places, love like this could mean arrest, loss of work, or exile from family. A photo could become evidence, so pictures were hidden, left without names, or destroyed for safety. Seen today, it still needs care, because we cannot know if the subjects wanted strangers to study them. It survives as proof that ordinary love kept living under unfair rules. 42. A Victorian-era bathing suit arrest photo. A swimmer stands beside police after being arrested for what she wore. By today's standards, the suit is modest, yet the law called it indecent. The camera turned a private day into a public warning, like shame could keep society clean. That is why the photo feels forbidden now. It shows morality enforced with force, not respect. It also shows how quickly crowds learn to judge when authority invites them to watch. What looks like a beach moment is really control dressed up as decency. 43. A ticket for wearing a bikini. An officer writes a citation while a woman stands in a bikini, sunlight hitting both of them like it's any other day. The normal feel makes it sharper. A body becomes a legal issue in public. Photos like this were used to prove order, even when the rule itself was about comfort and power. Modern debates about dress still exist, but this frame shows the older version clearly, law policing bodies with paper and pen. The camera adds another layer of exposure, turning a small moment into a lasting label. 44. A cabaret backstage photo. On stage, cabaret promised sparkle and ease. Backstage, the photo shows tired shoulders, harsh light, and a performer waiting between sets. These images rarely made it into respectable albums because they break the fantasy. They turn glamour into labor. You can almost feel the long night, the strict timing, and the need to keep smiling no matter what. Modern platforms sometimes flag nightlife scenes by default, even when nothing explicit appears. The value is honesty. The show is bright, but the work is heavy. 45. A burlesque costume display in a respectable archive. Feathers and sequins hang behind glass, stored like both art and trouble. The surprise is where they ended up. In archives that once acted like burlesque never existed. Labels were softened, dates went vague, and performers were rarely named. That is why the photo feels not allowed. It exposes a double life. Adults bought tickets, then demanded silence afterward. It also raises a credit question. Who stitched these outfits? Who wore them? And who decided their work was too improper to remember? 46. Early contraception artifact photo, kept out of polite museums. A small practical object sits in a case, made for one goal, to reduce the risk of pregnancy. People like to imagine the past as innocent, but artifacts like this say otherwise. Partners planned, families worried. Desire came with consequences, and people wanted control. Museums often avoided showing items like this because they made visitors uneasy. The photo still feels taboo because it touches private life, yet it corrects a lie by omission. It shows that taboo problems were real and solutions existed. 47. A discreet adult services sign in plain sight. A simple sign points to adult services hanging on a public street like any other shop notice. No secret code, no whisper, just business. Later generations rewrote the past as if these trades were always hidden, but the camera shows they were often open. The reason the memory faded is shame, not absence. Modern platforms may limit it because of the topic. This photo matters because it reveals how cities worked and how fast people repaint history once they want a cleaner story. 48. A beauty standard contest that now looks like coercion. Contestants stand in a line while judges study posture, shape, and correct appearance. Smiles look practiced. The photo sells it as fun, yet the body language reads like pressure. Winning could mean jobs, prizes, or social approval, so choice was never simple. This image feels wrong now because it turns humans into items to rank, then turns that ranking into entertainment. We still do versions of this today, only rulers became filters and likes. The old frame is valuable because it shows the same hunger for control. 49. A tattoo artist's portrait that wasn't proper. A tattoo artist poses with tools and steady hands, proud of a craft-polite society once called dirty. For a long time, tattoos were linked to sailors, prisoners, and outsiders, so portraits like this could be treated as scandalous. The camera caught someone claiming identity through skin, line, and ink, even when taste and law tried to fence bodies in. Today, tattoos are common, but this photo reminds you how recent that freedom is. It feels hidden because it shows self-expression as defiance. A person is saying, "I decide." 50. A quiet couple photo that looks ordinary until you know the risk. A couple stands close, dressed like anyone else, nothing loud in the frame. Then you learn their bond was banned by law or punished by custom, and the picture becomes brave. Many such photos were stored without names, passed down as friends, or kept out of family albums to avoid suspicion. It matters because it shows normal love living inside abnormal rules. It also asks us to handle it gently. We can respect what it represents, but we should not turn private courage into public entertainment. Some truths survive because people stayed careful. 51. A leader's office with no symbolism. A plain office, bare walls, simple desk. Nothing heroic in sight. It looks smaller than the speeches that shaped countries. Leaders prefer flags, portraits, and careful lighting that suggests destiny. This photo removes the stage and shows power as routine work. Papers, pens, and quiet choices. It feels rare because it weakens. The myth. If authority is just a room, then authority can be questioned. The camera shrinks a giant story into human scale. That scale can be unsettling because it reminds you how much depends on ordinary doors. And that changes your thinking. 52. A royal family candid photo that breaks the myth. A royal figure is caught mid-laugh, mid-sigh, or mid-annoyed glance. Not posed, not polished. That small crack matters because royalty survives on distance and dignity. Candid photos were discouraged, bought quietly, or stored away to protect the image. This frame feels not allowed because it makes the crown look like a costume worn by a human being. It also shows the cost of constant watching. Even in a palace, people get bored, irritated, and exhausted. The myth wants smooth marble. The camera finds a heartbeat behind the jewelry. 53. A famous wedding photobomb that changes the mood. A wedding portrait is meant to freeze happiness. Yet in the background, a grieving person appears, dressed in mourning, carrying loss into a bright room. Families often hid images like this because it felt like a stain on the celebration. But the photo tells a truer story. Life does not pause for ceremonies. The frame feels secret because it refuses a clean narrative. It shows two truths at once, love beginning and grief continuing. The camera catches how quickly joy and sorrow share the same air right there. 54. A government before and after assimilation image. Two photos show the same person labeled like a project. Before, in traditional clothing. After, in imposed dress, haircut, and posture corrected. Officials used images like this to sell control as an improvement. What the camera hides is the coercion behind the change: threats, punishment, language bans, enforced separation from family. Modern ethics treat these pictures as evidence of cultural violence, not progress. They are political because they show power using photography as a weapon. The lens is not recording a choice. It is recording an order being obeyed, or else. 55. An iconic speech crowd photo where the subject is hard to spot. The frame is a sea of faces, signs, and shoulders packed tight. Somewhere inside stands the speaker, whose history later turns into the star. This photo breaks the hero story. It shows big moments are built by crowds, not one voice. It also shows how memory pushes everyone else into the background. The hidden part is simple. History is collective. The camera refuses to aim only at one person, and that refusal is the point. 56. A warship incident photo kept quiet. A damaged warship sits in port, metal bent and rails twisted, the kind of sight official statements try to soften. In wartime, public confidence is treated like another weapon, so embarrassing accidents were often hidden. Reports used careful words, but the photo speaks fast. Something failed. Even years later, similar images can be limited if they reveal technical details. Historically, they matter because they show the gap between propaganda and reality. The ship looks unstoppable in posters, yet here it looks wounded, repairable, and real. 57. A declassified nuclear device photo. The device in the photo is smaller than most people imagine, a compact object on a stand, handled with extreme care. That size is the shock. Images like this were restricted because details mattered, and because fear itself was part of the strategy. When such photos become public, the story changes from abstract threat to physical reality. Even older images can be limited for security reasons. This frame is political because it shows how enormous power can fit in ordinary space. It turns deterrence into metal and bolts, and that makes it harder to ignore. 58. A prepared weapon that was never used. Equipment is staged and ready, labeled, tested, waiting for an order that never came. Crates are sealed, checklists signed, and everything is prepared for a single call. The haunting part is the word almost. History loves what happened, but near misses are often buried because they weaken trust. Peace can depend on timing, weather, or one person hesitating. This image matters because it freezes the edge of a decision. It shows disaster can be stopped by restraint, not by winning, and restraint rarely gets a monument. 59. A document photo, glyphs, code, or ledger. Rows of symbols and numbers fill a page, and the page outlives the hands that wrote it. It looks dull until you learn it may record taxes, arrests, deaths, or orders. Documents are powerful because they decide what counts as truth in courts and memory. That is why some were locked away, edited, or burned. A photo of ink can be more dangerous than a photo of a riot because it turns rumor into record. Once the camera captures it, denial gets harder. 60. A forbidden book/page image from a destroyed library tradition. A fragile page is photographed because the book was banned, burned, or lost during an attack on a culture. Sometimes only a few copies survived, hidden under floors or carried across borders. The photo is political because it shows resistance through words, not weapons. It reveals what rulers fear most: ideas that travel without permission. This image reminds you that survival can be quiet. Sometimes a single page is all that is left, and that page still refuses to vanish. 61. A bridge cable segment up close. The cable fills the frame like a metal wall. Each wire is thicker than a finger, twisted together into something that looks impossible to break. Seeing it up close makes your stomach tighten, because you realize how much weight depends on this one element holding steady. These photos feel unsettling because they turn trust into texture. Bridges feel safe because we never see the parts doing the work. The camera shows the hidden muscle of progress and reminds you that failure does not start loudly. It starts quietly, inside materials people assume will last forever. 62. A famous bridge mid-construction men stand on narrow beams high above open air. No harnesses, no rails, only balance and routine. To them, it was a job. To a modern eye, it looks like a dare. Safety laws came later, written in blood and accidents. This photo is frightening because nothing is wrong yet. The structure is rising, the workers are calm, and the future disaster has not happened. That calm is the warning. Engineering often looks strongest right before weakness appears. The camera caught confidence, not collapse, and that is what makes it hard to look at. 63. A city, right after a major collapse. Daylight reveals everything. Morning light hits broken concrete, twisted steel, and dust still hanging in the air. At night, collapse feels chaotic. By day, it feels final. The photo shows the scale clearly, how much space is gone, and how many routines stopped at once. Images like this spread slowly at first because officials want control over the story, but daylight makes hiding hard. The frame feels heavy because it shows consequences without drama. No flames, no motion, just absence. This is what failure leaves behind when the noise ends. 64. A skyscraper observation view from decades ago. Tourists lean against windows, smiling, cameras out, enjoying the view. Nothing in the frame suggests danger. That is what makes the image chilling now. We know what will happen years later, but they did not. Photos like this feel forbidden because they mix innocence with hindsight. They remind viewers that tragedy does not announce itself early. The camera captured normal joy in a place later defined by loss. It forces you to face how memory rewrites meaning. A harmless snapshot becomes something heavier once history finishes its sentence. 65. An early elevator or office contraption. The machine looks clever and dangerous at the same time. Exposed gears, thin cables, and platforms that feel too open. At the time, this was progress, a way to move people faster and build higher. Today, it looks like a lawsuit waiting to happen. The photo matters because it shows innovation before protection caught up. Early technology often trusted optimism more than testing. Seeing this image now feels wrong because we know what could go wrong. The camera froze the moment when belief in invention was stronger than fear of consequences. 66. A primitive computer being wired. Wires spill across the floor, panels are open, and a small team focuses on connecting parts by hand. The room looks more like a workshop than a future control center. This is the birth of modern life, messy, loud, and uncertain. Photos like this rarely went public because they did not look impressive, but they matter because they show how fragile the beginning was. One loose wire, one wrong switch, and nothing works. The image reminds you that the systems running the world started as experiments that could fail at any moment. 67. A remote control prototype photo. The device is large, awkward, and clearly expensive. Buttons are oversized, wires are visible, and the design feels unsure. It represents the future, but the future still looks clumsy here. These photos were often hidden because companies wanted sleek images, not awkward steps. The frame is uncomfortable because it shows how ideas stumble before they succeed. Progress is rarely smooth. The camera caught a moment when innovation had not learned how to pretend yet. It feels honest in a way marketing never allows. 68. A plane cabin, first class from an older era. Wide seats, heavy fabrics, and a calm atmosphere fill the cabin. It looks more like a lounge than transportation. This photo feels strange now because luxury has changed its meaning. Early air travel was rare, slow, and treated like an event. The image also hides risk. Planes were less tested, routes were less reliable, and safety standards were still forming. The camera shows comfort, not danger. That contrast makes the frame uneasy. It reminds you that trust in machines often grows before machines earn it fully. 69. A space capsule after splashdown. The capsule floats in open water, scratched, dented, and far less heroic than posters promised. Astronauts are safe, but the machine looks tired, like it barely made it. This photo is powerful because it shows the end of a journey, not the launch. Space travel is sold as clean and controlled. The landing proves otherwise. Nature takes over at the end. The camera captured reality instead of glory. It feels grounding, A reminder that even the greatest achievements end with impact, damage, and relief rather than perfection. 70. Volcanic eruption damage in a wartime year. Buildings stand broken, streets are buried in ash, and the sky looks wrong. War already strained resources, and nature added another disaster without warning. This photo matters because it shows how human plans mean nothing to geology. Governments may hide images like this to avoid panic or embarrassment, but the Earth does not care about schedules. The frame feels heavy because it shows two forces colliding: conflict and nature, neither waiting for the other. It is a reminder that collapse does not always come from mistakes. Sometimes it comes from the ground itself. 71. Rush hour, New York, in the early 1900s. The street is packed with people, carts, horses, and early cars all competing for space. There are no clear lanes, no signals, only movement and noise. Today, this looks reckless. Back then, it was normal. The photo feels wrong now because we are trained to expect order and rules. This frame shows a city learning as it goes, accepting danger as part of progress. It reminds you that safety is a choice society makes over time, not something that appears automatically with growth. 72. New York, after a massive snowstorm. Old-era men in suits and hats walk through, snow piled high, faces tired but focused. There are no plows clearing everything fast, no emergency alerts, just people adapting. The image feels distant and close at the same time. It looks calm, but the hardship is real. Sharing images like this today would raise questions about worker safety and exposure. Back then, it was resilience. The camera shows how cities once expected people to push through weather without help, and how that expectation shaped daily life. 73. Farm dinner table in the 1940s. A family sits around a simple table, portions modest, expressions quiet. This is not staged joy, it is routine. Food was planned carefully, waste avoided, and meals carried weight. The photo feels powerful because it shows scarcity without complaint. Today, images of families like this can feel intrusive because private life deserves respect. Yet this frame matters. It records how many people lived, not as a lesson, but as a fact. The camera caught normal life shaped by limits. 74. Skate to work, save gas poster moment. A poster shows people skating through streets, smiling, framed as patriotic and smart. It was a response to shortages, turning sacrifice into style. Today, it looks strange, almost playful, for a serious problem. The image feels forbidden because it mixes hardship with cheer, and because it shows how quickly messaging can shape behavior. The camera reveals how governments sell restraint as a lifestyle. It reminds you that even daily movement can become political when resources run thin. 75. London Bridge lined with homes and shops. The bridge is crowded with buildings, signs, and people living on top of moving water. It looks impossible by modern standards. Fire risk, collapse risk, and sanitation problems, all ignored for space and profit. The photo feels unreal now because we separate living and transit. This image shows compromise, cities stacking life wherever they could. The camera caught a structure doing two. Many jobs at once. It survived for a time, then changed. That change came from learning, often the hard way. 76. A door that's nearly 1,000 years old. The door looks ordinary, wood worn smooth by hands long gone. Nothing dramatic marks it as special. That is why it feels strange. Most objects do not last this long. Sharing images of ancient everyday items feels odd because we expect age to look impressive. This photo matters because it shows continuity. People passed through this door without knowing it would outlive nations. The camera captured time hiding inside something simple, reminding us that history often survives quietly. 77. Sweet Track Walkway remains. Wooden planks sit preserved in the earth, once a path across wet ground thousands of years ago. It was a solution to a daily problem, not a monument. The photo feels surprising because it shows ancient people planning routes, commuting like anyone else. This image would not shock at first glance, but its age changes everything. It reminds you that modern problems are old ones. The camera connects today's roads to a past that solved movement with patience and wood. 78. Early street photography of poverty. A photographer frames people living on the edge, capturing worn clothes, tired faces, and crowded rooms. At the time, it was called awareness. Today, it raises ethical questions. Did the subjects agree? Did the image help them, or just inform others? The photo feels uncomfortable because it sits between truth and exposure. It shows real conditions, but also turns suffering into content. Modern rules try to balance this, but the debate continues. The frame forces you to ask who benefits when hardship is recorded. 79. A Dazzle camouflage ship photo. The ship is painted with bold stripes and angles, looking more like a painting than a weapon. The design was meant to confuse enemies, not hide the ship. Today, it looks artistic, almost playful. This image feels odd because it blends war and creativity. The camera captured a moment when design became defense. It shows how rules change perception. What once saved lives now looks like art, and that shift can make people forget why it existed at all. 80. A zoo photo where kids were encouraged to get too close. Children stand inches from large animals, smiling, hands reaching out. There are no strong barriers, only trust and optimism. Today, this looks dangerous. Safety rules changed because accidents happened. The photo feels forbidden now because it shows risk normalized. Yet it also shows a time when people believed closeness meant understanding. The camera caught innocence and danger in the same frame. It reminds you that many rules we follow today were written after moments like this went wrong. 81. A famous actor in a ridiculous costume. The costume looks silly, oversized, and completely wrong for the serious roles people remember. One photo collapses a carefully built image. Studios tried to hide moments like this because brands depend on control. Seeing a star dressed this way reminds viewers that fame is managed, not natural. The camera caught playfulness instead of authority. That contrast feels uncomfortable because it breaks the spell. Icons need distance to survive. When distance disappears, the person underneath becomes visible, awkward, and human in a way marketing never allows. 82. Two future stars calling their moms after a win. The photo shows a celebration, but the detail that matters is the phone. Before speeches and headlines, they called home. Fame did not cut the cord yet. Images like this were often kept private because they weaken the myth of self-made success. This frame feels warm because it shows grounding. No crowd, no spotlight, just voices on the other end. The camera captured a moment where achievement still needed family approval. It reminds viewers that even at the top, people look backward for comfort and reassurance. 83. A pop star before. The stage name the person in the photo looks unsure, dressed plainly, almost anonymous. No styling, no confidence cues, no signal of what comes next. Managers dislike images like this because they disrupt the fantasy arc. The before does not match the brand. Today, such photos spread fast because audiences love origin stories. The image matters because it shows identity as something built, not discovered. Fame did not arrive fully formed. It was assembled piece by piece, with doubt present long before certainty. 84. A comedian photographed mid-hustle in a park. The performer stands in a park, drawing a small crowd, testing jokes that may fail. No stage lights, no applause guaranteed. This is the work part people rarely see. Studios and networks focused on polished success, not open-air struggle. The photo feels honest because it shows risk without protection. Humor grows through trial, embarrassment, and repetition. The camera caught effort before reward. That effort is easy to forget once laughter becomes effortless on screen. This frame brings the climb back into view. 85. Backstage photo of two Hollywood icons together. Two famous faces share space without posing, caught between scenes. The surprise is their closeness. History often separates legends into neat lanes, but this image proves overlap. Studios controlled access carefully, so moments like this stayed rare. The photo feels special because it collapses timelines. It shows that stars lived in the same rooms, shared jokes, and waited under the same lights. The camera recorded the connection instead of the competition. That simple fact can feel disruptive to carefully separated narratives. 86. A movie trick revealed. The image shows lifts inside shoes, forced angles, or hidden props doing quiet work. The illusion disappears instantly. Film depends on belief, so exposing tricks was discouraged. Yet this photo matters because it teaches how stories are built. Magic is mechanical. Grandeur is measured. Seeing the trick does not ruin the art. It deepens respect for craft. The camera shows that perfection is engineered, not natural. What looked effortless required planning, tools, and adjustment. Reality sits just outside the frame. 87. A child photo of someone who later reshaped politics. The child looks ordinary, posed in a family setting with no hint of future power. That ordinariness is the point. Photos like this feel strange because we want destiny to be visible early. It rarely is. This image matters because it removes inevitability. Leaders are not born framed by history. They grow inside homes, routines, and small moments. The camera caught the beginning without signs. That absence reminds viewers that paths are shaped by choices, not prophecies. 88. A celebrity mugshot era montage faces line up in official frames, stripped of glamour and control. For some stars, these images became more famous than their work. Publishing them sold papers and clicks. The discomfort comes from a power imbalance. The system freezes for a moment and refuses to let it fade. Modern debates question whether this is justice or spectacle. The photo series matters because it shows how fame and policing intersect. A mistake becomes permanent when a camera and public curiosity combine. 89. A famous princess's revenge night photo. The dress, the posture, and the timing turn clothing into a message. Cameras captured it instantly because symbolism sells. This image spread because it flipped expectations. Royal behavior usually hides emotion. Here, emotion walked openly. The photo feels powerful because it shows self-expression inside constraint. Fashion becomes language when words are limited. The camera recorded a response, not just an outfit. That response reshaped how people read public image, turning style into a statement. 90. A writer's room snapshot of a future cultural machine. A messy table, scattered notes, tired faces, and laughter mid-argument. Nothing about the room looks historic, yet the jokes born there will shape culture for decades. Photos like this rarely mattered at the time. They looked ordinary. That is why they matter now. The camera captured creativity before it hardened into legacy. It shows culture as a group effort, not a lightning strike. Humor, like power, grows through rooms filled with disagreement, trust, and time. 91. Aerial photo of an uncontacted tribe. From above, people move through land unchanged by roads or borders. The photo raises a sharp question. Is recording this a protection or an intrusion? Images like this were often restricted because they can invite harm. Contact brings disease, violence, and loss. The camera sees discovery, but history teaches caution. This frame feels heavy because it shows a world still intact and fragile at once. Looking becomes an act with consequences. The image forces viewers to consider whether knowing always helps. 92. An orangutan walking through forest ruins. The animal moves alone through broken land, eyes alert, posture careful. No words are needed. The photo accuses quietly. Deforestation becomes personal when a living being navigates absence. Such images spread widely because they trigger guilt and responsibility. Yet they are also painful to watch. This frame matters because it connects cause and effect in one glance. The camera captured survival under pressure. It asks viewers to see loss not as statistics, but as presence displaced. 93. A blue whale heart on display. The heart sits massive and still, dwarfing people nearby. Seeing it rewires scale in your mind. Life this large feels unreal until it is reduced to an object. Museums handle images like this carefully because awe can slip into spectacle. The photo matters because it shows the physical reality behind abstract terms like largest animal. It also carries sadness. What supported an ocean giant now sits silent. The camera froze in. Wonder and loss together. 94. Ancient footprints preserved in sand footprints stretch across hardened ground, perfectly formed, leading somewhere unknown. They prove humans stood here far earlier than once believed. This image rewrites maps and timelines. It feels unsettling because it shrinks modern certainty. History is not fixed. New evidence shifts stories. The camera captured motion without bodies, presence without voices. That quiet power makes the photo unforgettable. It connects you to someone who walked, paused, and moved on, leaving only shape behind. 95. A reconstructed ancient face from a skull artist's rebuild features from bone, giving eyes, skin, and expression to someone long gone. The result feels intimate and unsettling. Consent is impossible. Accuracy is debated. Yet curiosity pushes forward. This image matters because it collapses distance. The past looks back. Museums share such photos with caution because they can feel invasive. Still, they offer connection. The camera records an attempt to meet history halfway, knowing the gap can never fully close. 96. Stonehenge, then versus now. Two images sit side by side, one early and empty, one modern and crowded. Time fills the space between them with meaning. The stones do not change, but people do. This comparison works as a moral argument about preservation, access, and impact. The camera shows how curiosity can wear things down. What was once remote becomes consumed. The photo pairing forces viewers to ask what protection really means when attention itself causes damage. 97. Eiffel Tower under construction. Men stand on iron beams, shaping what will become a symbol. Without context, it looks unfinished and fragile. The photo feels strange because icons are meant to appear complete in memory. Seeing construction reveals risk and uncertainty. The tower was once criticized, doubted, and temporary in plan. The camera captured a moment before pride replaced fear. It reminds viewers that even the most solid symbols begin as experiments held together by trust and labor. 98. Statue of Liberty in Paris before the journey. The statue stands incomplete, sections visible, waiting to travel. It is an object before it becomes meaningful. This image feels important because it breaks the illusion of destiny. Symbols are built, shipped, and assembled. They are not born in place. The camera shows an icon as cargo, vulnerable and unfinished. That vulnerability matters. It reveals how ideas cross borders through effort, not magic, and how meaning arrives after materials. 99. A city comparison photo. Then versus now, two frames show the same street decades apart. Buildings rise, people change, and rhythms shift. Progress is visible, but so is loss. Familiar corners disappear. Memory competes with development. These images spread because they invite reflection without words. They feel heavy because they show time's trade-offs. The camera did not judge. It recorded change and let viewers decide whether growth always means improvement. The answer rarely feels simple. 100. Final image. A normal crowd before catastrophe. A crowd fills the frame, relaxed and unaware. Nothing signals what will happen next. That is the closing truth. Cameras are not warnings. They are mirrors. This photo closes the circle because it shows how disaster hides inside ordinary days. Looking back, viewers search for signs that were never there. The image teaches humility. History does not announce itself clearly. Often, the most haunting pictures are the ones that look completely safe.